Hey Coder, so it's time to finally protect our routes using Qwik. And there's a number of things that we need to go through. But today what we're going to do is make sure that for your website, you control specifically who can access what pages based on their role. Whether they're a paid user, maybe they should have access to certain content or pages, or maybe they're a logged in user, or maybe they're neither. You will learn from this video how to control everything. Now, after this video, we're going to start talking about things like Stripe and hosting on Amazon Web Services and maybe PayPal integrations. I know someone was keen to see that as well. And so I've given this some thought, and what I've decided to do is to bucket those as a separate series for each topic. Because, for example, with Stripe, this will work with your back end. So you don't need to be using Qwik or React or Solid or anything. Whatever back end you're using, I'm going to be using JavaScript, will work for that. So there will be a series on Stripe, and you can just use that with your Qwik application that you've built here, because you won't even be using Qwik. You'll be using your server side that we created with Node and Express, which is what I will be using. And then in terms of deployment with Docker and Amazon Web Services, etc., that can be an absolute headache and minefield for people. So what I want to do in that video or that series is really go through the details and make sure that people don't get stuck, because I've had months of headaches with AWS. It was worth it, but I don't think people should have to suffer. What that means is this will be the last video in this series. Maybe I'll do some more in the future, but for now, it'll be the last one relating to Qwik specifically, because everything else will work with React, Solid, Qwik. Doesn't matter what you use, it'll all work the same. Now, how do we protect our route? Because right now we have this members only area, but the problem with it is if I go here to my application, I'm not logged in. You can see I've got no cookies at the moment. In fact, I'll nuke those there for now too. I can just go straight to the dashboard. If I click on dashboard, there I am. I'm on the dashboard page, and this is a problem. So how do we actually go about protecting this? Well, let's go over to Qwik's documentation, because this is likely to change. I know that the updated versions of Qwik City will not work like this, but for now, this is the latest documentation, and this is what we're going to go with. And we use this OnGet here. So if you go to Qwik City and retrieving data, you will see here that you can run server-side code using OnGet to basically go and pull any information that you want and then do that logic or throw an error if that user shouldn't access that page, etc. So we're going to protect it on the server side, and I'm also going to write a small little script as well in the component to also protect it on the client side, just in case that fails for whatever reason. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this code here, we're going to modify it, we're going to pull, rather than pulling product data, as it's shown here in the Qwik documentation, we're going to pull user session data. So what's the user? Are they logged in? What's their role, etc.? We're going to take the server-side cookie and on the server check that they have the right role, etc. before Qwik renders the page. So this will run before the page gets rendered. And because this will run before the page gets rendered, here you can see, here's the component, and then here's that function above we just looked at. That means the user can't tamper with the page to access it. So this will protect against malicious attacks. And we're going to need two pages for this, really. We're going to need our helpers TypeScript here. This is where we're going to write a function that goes and pulls information server side. And we're also going to need our dashboard page. So here you can see I'm here, members dashboard. You're going to need, this page as well. Now, right now, I just have an isShow with a signal set to true, and it shows the dashboard. It says if isShow, here's the dashboard. Otherwise, if I put this to false, then I go back here as well. You'll see it's just a blank page on the dashboard. So this does really nothing useful right now. It's just empty. And then also what I want to do before we go and code that up is I noticed when logging in with providers, etc., the behavior was a bit uncertain in terms of storing the cookies server side. And so what I'm going to do is just copy the code that we had in the last session and also use it here on the staging page just to make sure that cookies are getting stored the way they should. So it's something that I'm still getting used to myself, but I wanted to show you my experience and the bugs I come across as I do, so that when you come across them, you know it's completely normal. And before we even do that, just go here to your vite.config.typescript page. You'll notice here I've added this little server snippet. And what that does is it basically makes it so I don't have to go npm run build. So what we were doing is npm run build. Then when it builds, we're having to go npm run deploy to run on port 3000. By doing this, we can go npm run dev, and it's going to run here on port 3000 and allow us to save. And we won't have to build and deploy every time we want to just test the front end. So just add this bit of code here. It's going to save you a lot of time. Okay, great. So let's head over here to the staging page. And what I also want to do is open up my root, because I'm going to copy some code from there. So you see this code we have here where we send our cookies to the server. That is the code I'm going to want. So what I'll do here is right below where we get the user, I also want to get the session. So here I'm going to say const data, and then here we're going to call that data session, and I'm actually going to break into an object called session as well, and that's going to say await supabase.auth.session, get session, like follows. Brilliant. And then what we'll say is if session. Then we want to do the same thing our event listener on the root was doing, because that doesn't seem to be picking up the way I would have wanted it to. And that's probably due to my own lack of experience with it. So that is probably no fault of Qwik whatsoever. But what I'm going to do is go and copy that code in here like such. So under if session, I've now copied that same code from the root. That's going to allow us to go and store those server-side cookies. So here it'll grab the access token, the refresh token, etc. It said those, and all I need to do is import Axios in order to go and do that here. Brilliant. So now let's just go npm run dev again. I want to come over here. I'm going to restart my page. Let's go to the home page here. Now let's make sure there's no cookies, etc. Yep, it's nothing going on there. I want to go to login. I'm just going to use the GitHub login just for speed here. So let's click on that. And there we go. Now to know this has worked correctly, what you should see here is a tick underneath the H for HTTP only. So there and there. So here's my refresh token, and here's my JSON web token, also known as my server access token. That's gone and stored. That was sent to our backend, and our backend has stored this. And then this here is being handled here through Supabase, etc. So that's brilliant. If I go back to the home page, you can see we are indeed logged in. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log out, and you can see that the server here has changed. This token has gone to this expires token as such. And if I go back to log in again and just wait, there you go. You can see that our tokens have been updated and we're here on the dashboard page. Brilliant. So actually I'm going to get rid of this now because we don't need it and I'd like some space. And what I'm going to do is come back over here and let's go close our root. We can now close our staging page over here as well. And we're on our dashboard page. So what do I want to do here? Well, I'm going to go over to the Qwik documentation and I'm just going to copy this exactly as it is from the docs. And let's go and paste that down here for now. And instead of product data, we're going to use something called session data, which you can call whatever you want because we're going to create the interface for it up here. That is referring to that. And we'll say is session, and that's going to be, for example, a Boolean value. And then we're going to have our user, which will just be a user object. I'll put that as any. And then role, I'm going to have stay as a string. Brilliant. And then this is returning an error over here, which it should do because I need to return is session, user, role, exactly like we had it over here. And the user will just put as an empty object. The role we'll put here as an empty string. And the is session right now, we'll just keep that as false and get rid of this comment here. Now this part here works a lot like Express. You can put in request, response, even get cookies, etc. So I'm going to use this cookie and response. I don't need the request. I'm going to get rid of that. But if you wanted to pull request information, that's how you would do it over there. Now, just remember, this documentation is very likely to change, and the way of doing this is likely to improve with Qwik as well. I know they're doing a lot of work on it, but given the version that we're using right now, so if I go down here to my package.json, you can see I'm using 0.0.128. So if you want this to work exactly like this video, make sure that this is the Qwik city version in your JSON or your package.json that you're using. Now, if I go here and I go console.log, let's for example console log cookie as follows, you can see that it logs down here on the server side. It's not going to be logging, if I go here, it's not going to be logging here in my console. If I go to my console, like such, this is just a user object. This is not the session. This is something else that we're console logging, right? So this is brilliant because it means this code is running on the server before the page renders. And this is how we protect our route. We write the logic on the server side before the user has a chance to try to hack it or interact with it. And so what we'll do is write a function that goes and does that for us. And I'm going to write that over here in the helpers. So what I want to do here is say check user. So we're going to write this in a separate file here in the helpers TypeScript file. Authenticated, auth and role we'll put via server. That's what this will do. So here we'll just say export const and we'll say get user profile like follows and open and close parentheses. In fact, this is how we should write the function. And this will be an asynchronous function as well. Now let's just cancel this for a second and stop console logging our cookie because we don't need that right now. And just make sure you have the following packages installed. So npm install here .env. Now what .env will do is enable us to go and work with our environment variables. And you'll notice here I have a .env file created. So this is not something I could upload to GitHub because you should never upload a .env to GitHub. It is in my git ignore for that not to upload. But if I just go and click on it here, you'll see that I have my Supabase URL and Supabase secret key. Now I've just removed those for this video here because it's not information I should share publicly, but this is where you want to go and put that information. Create something called Supabase _URL and paste in your Supabase URL and here your secret key and paste that in just like we have done when we set up our backend Express server, right? So this must be a .env and it must be in the project root directory. So here, not under roots, just to be clear, it should be under my project directory, which you can see here under frontend.env. Once you've pasted in your Supabase URL and secret key, and also make sure it's not the anonymous public key because this won't work. If you do that, it needs to be the secret key. And you can get that again from the same place you get the anon public key from. Once you've done that, what you need to do is import your create client from Supabase as such, right? So here, import that. And the other thing we're going to want is .env. So here I'm going to import .env from here .env. And this will work on the server side. So what I want to do down here is configure it only when this function is called. So this will only call via server side. Let's just make that very clear. And so what I want to do here is just go .env.config. And then what I want to do over here is actually create my Supabase client. But before we do that, let's just go and initialize output. And so here we'll say const user object will be an empty object for now, and we'll just save that as any. And we'll also say over here const our return result, which I'll just call ret, that's fine, is going to be equal to the following. It's going to be is session, and that is going to be right now false. And what else did we say? We said we also wanted a user, which is going to be an empty object. So I can just go and see that here, interface user and role string. So role is going to be an empty string, just like we had before. And let's just say here, connect to Supabase. So the way we're going to do that is we'll say, first of all, we need to get our Supabase URL. So let's say Supabase URL as follows equals process.env. This is how we use .env, remember, to go and get that environment variable, Supabase _URL like such. And then what I also want to do here is get the secret key. So secret key, remember, not the non-public key. This is the secret key. So secret _key, make sure that's all spelled correctly. So then what I want to do is go Supabase server like follows. And that is going to be equal to, and you could just call this Supabase, by the way, but I like to know when I'm creating a server-based client with the secret key and a client-based one with the non-public key. So I'm going to call this Supabase server, so it's clear for me as the developer. And this is going to be create client, open and close parentheses, Supabase URL, and Supabase secret key like follows. Now it's going to say, well, how do you know you've got that? And the way I'm going to do it, what I could do actually as well is I could just put an exclamation here and here. That would get rid of the problem. But what you'll notice is that brings problems when it comes to building with Qwik.js. It's better just to do it like I'm going to do here. I'm going to say if Supabase URL and Supabase secret key, then go and connect to the client and basically run my code. So here we're going to say connect or run code. I like to comment everything, and here we'll just say extract env for Supabase. Brilliant. Now what I want to do is actually go and get the cookie as well. So we've now connected to Supabase, but I want to get the JSON web token, so the access token. So here I can say const JWT is going to be equal to cookie. Now, where's my cookie going to come from? Well, I should be passing it here from my dashboard or my protected route page. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to import get user profile from the helpers. And here we'll say const profile is going to be equal to get user profile. And this is going to be await. Make sure this is marked as async. And let's pass in our cookie as follows. So that's over there. That there we're passing as such. And it's saying, well, hang on a second, we're not expecting this. Well, if we go back here to our helper function that we're writing, we can just pass it in here now and hit save. Now, if I go back over here, you can see that error's gone away. And here we're getting our profile over there as follows. Brilliant. So what I want to do here is say JWT is equal to cookie, and that's going to be .get. What's our cookie called? It's called server-access-token as follows. And that there we're going to say $value. Let's just make sure that's worked. So here I'm going to console.log JWT and hit save there. Let's go npm run dev as follows. And there we go. You can see I'm running here on port 3000. Let's go over here and refresh the page. Let's go here and you can see it's printed in the server side, on the server side, the JSON web token. So that is working fantastically well. If I was to go here, for example, just to prove to you, if I go back here to the index and I try to get this profile here on the component side. So let's try to do that here with some kind of function. So here I'm going to say const get info. We'll delete this in a minute anyway, and that's going to be equal to $1. And what we're going to do is write our function here. So get info, that'll be an asynchronous function like follows. And we need to just import our $, up here so that we can go and run this. This is how we write a function in Qwik in the component side. And first of all, I don't have a cookie here to get, but let's just pretend I did. I'm just going to mark this as such over there. But if I try to go and return, let's go and return JWT rather than printing it out here, because now I'm going to console log it, because this part down here in the component runs on the client side. So in fact, what I'm going to do here is just return whether there's a JSON web token or not. I'm just going to return hello. Yo, hello, yo. Brilliant. And so if I get hello, yo back, then I should be able to print this out. So here I'll console.log profile. And if I see hello, yo, then we have a problem, because that means that we were somehow able to connect to Supabase, etc. on the client side with the secret key, and that would be a big problem. But let's have faith. So here I'm going to say use client effect, and we're going to go and run this over here. So get info when the client goes and runs. And I'm going to delete all of this in a minute. It's just to show you something. You don't have to do this. But if I go here to view, developer, developer tools, and here I'm in my console, let's just refresh the page. And you can see here, it hasn't printed that out. I've got a user here, which is not what I returned, but there's no hello yo. And so this is not going to work, which is brilliant because it should only work on the client side. So we can get rid of that. We can get rid of this here as well. And that was just to show you that the code is working exactly as it should. If I go and refresh this now, you can see I get no more errors here on the client side. Now, let's go over here to our helpers and continue with our code because we know we're getting our JSON web token, but now we need to use that to actually go and authenticate with Supabase. And here we do that by going authenticate with Supabase, and we can just say const, and this will be data is equal to await, and now it's Supabase server, because that's the client we've created there, .auth.get user. And we do that by passing in the JSON web token like we had over here. Brilliant. So that should return our user for us. So then what we can say is if data here and a user was returned, so data.user with an ID, then we know it's worked. So if that is returned here from data, then what we can do is we can say, okay, well, our ret over here, user, will be equal to, so here we can say ret.user is going to be equal to data.user as follows. And even before then, we can say our ret.isSession is going to be equal to true because we know that there must be a session if we were able to get that information. Now, I don't know what role this user has right now. I know that they have a session. I know that they're a real user and I have their ID and details, but I don't know what role they have. And I don't mean the user auth role from Supabase. I mean the one we created when we did our profiles table, where we could assign users different roles, maybe free or paid or, you know, gold membership or whatever it is we're doing. So we need to go and extract that from Supabase. So we're going to go and do that down here. So what I'm going to do is say, let's get user profile, and we'll do this as follows. Or here we can say structure result and get user profile. And so here we can say const, and we'll say data, but we'll call that profile is going to be equal to Supabase server, Supabase server, like follows, dot from, and this is from our profiles table. And what do we want to get? Well, we want to select, and all I need from there is the role. I could put a star if I want to return everything, but I'm just going to get the role from the user. And what do I need to filter on here? Well, I need to make sure that the ID, and therefore actually it's not just the role I need here, it's going to be the ID as well. So I need to select ID and role, ID comma role. The ID needs to be equal here to our data.user.id from above over there. Let's just format this. And then what I want to do here is put limit 1. Should only get one result back. Now this also needs to be await. That'll get rid of that error over there. And that should get me back my profile. So what I can do here is go console.log and profile, hit save like follows. And here you can see it's gone and run for me. But if it didn't for you, just go back here, refresh your browser window as follows. But here you can see it's returned the user ID and the role for that user. Now, right now they're a free user. Yours could be paid. It could be whatever role you've updated your database to have for that user. But we now have what their role is as well. So here what I can do is say if profile and profile.role. And this is not just profile.role because this is in an array. So you can see here we've got an array. So we need to break into this. So here we're going to say profile 0.role as follows. Now I can break into that, get that role. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say our ret.role is going to be equal to our profile 0.role as follows. Then let's console.log here our ret role just to make sure that has updated. And there you go, free. Brilliant. So what we can do now is return our result. And we actually don't need this user object here. I haven't really made any use of that up there. So I'm just going to get rid of that. And then what I'm going to do here after this if function down here, we're going to say return result. And I'm going to return our ret, return our return basically, which is, and we could even just call this output if we wanted to, but I won't change it now. And so this is session user and role that we've now updated is now going to be passed over here to our profile where we're calling it on our index page. So on our dashboard page over here, I should say. So here, what I'm going to do is say if, because remember our profile is now basically equal to ret. So here we're going to say if profile dot role, here I'm going to say is equal to free. And in fact, if it's not equal to free, in other words, they're not signed in, there is no role, then what I want to do is throw a response dot redirect as follows. And right now what happens with Qwik is you put the URL you want to redirect to. So here I'm going to put it to the home page. I could even put login or something like that. Right now I'll just do home. But we're just going to redirect there, and I'm going to put comma something like 300 as the status. Now, I think in later versions it might be that you do it this way. So just check. If this doesn't work for you, just play around. Here you can see that won't work. This needs to be a string. That needs to be a number as follows. And before, I couldn't get this to work for ages, by the way. And I figured out that I wasn't throwing a response. When I started doing that, things seem to work a lot better for me. So just note, if you have struggled with this, it's probably to do with this throw over here. Now go back to your website, make sure you're logged out, and then you can go here and click on dashboard. Now, when I do that, you'll see it actually goes and shows me the page. And this is a problem. But now if I go and actually run that page, it redirects me back to the home page. If I wanted to, I could have it redirect me to login. So here I'm going to say login as follows. And let's go back here again. And let's go back to the home page and go back to dashboard. Again, it runs. But if somebody was to visit this page directly as follows without using the link, you see now it redirects them to wherever we tell it to redirect them, which is very, very useful. Now, honestly speaking, I don't think it's great right now that if you click on the link, so if I'm using the actual Qwik link here, it'll go and render that page, etc. I don't know why that's happening. I don't know if it's something I'm getting wrong over here. And I'm sure that there's someone much smarter than me in the comments who will be able to give some advice on that. But what I'm going to do for the time being is handle this in one of two ways. One way I could do it. So for example, if I go here to my home page, and here on my home page where I have this link to members dashboard, what I could do is actually just replace that here as follows. So we'll take our button action like such, and I'm going to put this down here. And what we can do is just create something like an A tag. So here href is going to be equal to members dashboard like such. And let's just go here dashboard. And in fact, let's get rid of that. We can just hide that out completely. Let's just get rid of that there. And now if I go here to my home page, so let's go back to the home page and I click on dashboard, you'll see it redirects me. So when I'm using this link, it's not registering it on the server side. Now, I don't know if that's something I need to set here as a parameter in link. I don't know if it's something I'm missing out on there, but what I would say to you for now is maybe just use this A tag over here for now. Just maybe use that, and that will ensure that it gets rendered server side. But the good news is if somebody goes here and they maliciously try to type in members dashboard to access it, and you've removed the Qwik links, I should say, not next, Qwik link, and you're doing it by the href, then it'll just redirect them straight back to login. You'll see it will not allow me to get to that members dashboard area. Now, if I log in, so I click on my GitHub here, redirecting to dashboard, you can see I'm now on the dashboard. If I go to the home page and I go down here, click on dashboard, you can see here I am, right? I'm back on the dashboard and now it's all working because I'm logged in. So this protection is in fact working exactly like it should, but this really stumped me for ages because I was like, why is it not working? And really what it came down to is that you just need to figure out how you're accessing that page. So please, if you know a better way to handle that link issue I had, please put it in the comments so that people who watch this video in the future won't have to have that same headache. That said, what I want to do is also now go and protect this here on the client side. So how do I go and receive this data to see, you know, were they logged in, etc. And let's say for some reason it did render on the client side, I want to just put in that extra safeguard there as well. So how do I go and do that? Well, if we go over here to our documentation, you'll notice down here we can access our data here through this use endpoint, and that comes here from Qwik City. So copy that and just bring in here your use endpoint as follows. And so what I can do over here in my component is I can just say session data is equal to use endpoint, and in here I'm going to use session data. So here in the docs you can see it's using product data. Here I'm just putting session data as follows. And the other thing I'm going to want is a use client effect so that we can go and run this check as the component loads. So here what I'm going to do is put use client effect and put our function as such. Make sure it's an asynchronous function over here. And so what I'm going to do here is say const session D for data, or I'll just put session actually, is going to be equal to await and then session data, which is what we called up here, dot value. Now notice up here, we're returning the is session false user, etc. We haven't actually returned our profile, which is what we need to return up here. So that there is what we basically need to go and return, right? And so if you return this, then it'll always say there's not a session. So make sure you're returning the profile. So here we're going to say return profile. And let's go and console.log our session as follows. And then here on our dashboard page, Command-Shift-R. So I'm going to refresh that properly. Let's go to View, Developer Tools. Let's look at the object, and there you go. Role is free. So we are now accessing this information that was gathered on the server, but we're accessing it client side. So right, so this is getting caught on the server, and then here on the client side, we're able to access that through this use endpoint. So up here, let's just call this server side get session like follows. And then down here, this is our client side component. Just to make it very clear for anyone who might be a bit new to server versus client. And then what I want to do here is say if session dot is session, then what I want to do, or I'll say not is session. That's an even better way of doing it. What I want to do here is bring in use navigate. So here I'm going to import use navigate from Qwik City. In fact, we can import it here in the same place as we imported the use endpoint, so use navigate. And so what I'm going to do here is say const nav is equal to use navigate. This is very similar to React router, or next, I should say next router. And what I want to do here is say nav.path is going to be equal to /login as such. Let's just format all of that. Else, what we'll do is we'll say is show dot value is equal to true. Now it's already true, so let's set it as default to false. And if it's true, then what should happen is this component will render nicely. So if I go back here and I go Control-Shift-R and refresh, there it is over there. And if I go back now to my home page, and I'm going to click on the link here, because remember, if I click here, it will definitely just redirect me to the login page when I log out. Won't work like it just did. In fact, let me show you. If I log out and I click here, it redirects me to login. But if I was to click on the dashboard there, then it would have redirected me. However, that's now gone, obviously, because we've logged out. So what I'm going to go and do, just to prove it to you, is let's go here to our index and let's uncomment this again over there, because we know this is using the next link, which it was working before, even when a user wasn't logged in. So what I'm going to do here, I say next link, sorry, that's, I'm so used to using Next.js, quick link, I should say. And now if I click on dashboard, here you can see it flashed for a second because the client loaded, but then it brought me back here. If I go back here again and I hit dashboard, bang, it just brings me straight back to the login page. So we've caught that in case there is a problem on the client side anyway. So the only thing that I think is really uncertain for me at this time, and maybe you have an answer for it, is when using this link here, it doesn't render the server side. And I think that's how it's supposed to work. So maybe the right thing to do here is to build with this A tag as follows. Now you can see when I try to build my application, you can see link is defined but never used. So I can just comment that out. And button action is defined but never used. So I'll comment that out as well. And if I go to npm run build, then excellent, that builds just fine. So let's go npm run start so that we're not doing this in development mode anymore, and test out our application, right? So here I have my Qwik application for code raiders, and I will be able to go and access a dashboard if I'm logged in. Right now I'm not logged in, so it forwards me here to the login page. But if I go here to login and I go and log in, now you can use it via your email and do it with magic link. But just to be quicker, I'm going to log in here through GitHub. When I go and do that, it goes to a staging page, checks my authentication, redirects to the dashboard, and here I am. If I go back to the home page now, I can get to the dashboard. I can get here to the dashboard via the A link there as well, a href link, I should say, and that is all working fantastically well. So well done. You now have a full stack site. It might not be on Amazon Web Services yet with Stripe, etc., but we're going to do that in subsequent series, as I mentioned at the start of this video. But you now have a full stack site over here, which has an API gateway running on Docker. It has a Node Express server that can talk with your front end, which we've built here in Qwik. And that all interacts here with Supabase in a really, really good, nice and easy way. Now, in up and coming videos, we need to Dockerize our front end application. So I know we use Docker a little bit, but here we need to create a Docker file and we want to go and Dockerize our application. We want to go and launch our application on Amazon Web Services because that's probably where you're going to get the best bang for your buck, or at least there's a lot of functionality on AWS, so it's worth learning. Also, your customers need to be able to pay you. So we need to integrate with Stripe and also PayPal. And so as mentioned earlier, we will create a separate series for each of those topics so that we can get through that properly. And you will be a full stack developing ninja by the end of watching those. Now, I just wanted to say a big thank you to all the positivity and support on the channel. I honestly wasn't sure if this was going to be very helpful for people or not, but I'm really enjoying making the videos and I'm looking forward to making some more. So remember, if you've got lots of projects or ideas on the go, or something just feels too big and monumental and you're procrastinating, just shut up and code.